In this video, I'm going to be talking about progressive overload and what I've been getting wrong for a while, but I'm also going to explain how you can avoid falling into the wrong mindset. The key concept to understand here is that hypertrophy causes progressive overload, not the other way around, and you don't have to really apply progressive overload. It just kind of happens automatically if you're trained to failure. Let's say you're curling 50 pounds for 10 reps and that was to failure. Well then, next time, if you got stronger, then you would automatically be doing 11 reps if you were going to failure. So don't worry about adding reps or weight, just worry about training to failure with good technique. Because when you train to failure, then progressive overload happens automatically, if you're training properly and actually building muscle. Progressive overload is more like a sign of hypertrophy instead of what's causing it. So double progression is the most common form of progressive overload. And how do you actually do it? Well, basically, you have a rep range, right? Let's say it's like 10 to 15. And then you start at the bottom of the rep range with whatever weight. And then each week or every 2 weeks, you're adding a rep. And basically, once you get to the top of your rep range, at 15 reps in this case, then you would add weight to go back down to 10 reps. But one important thing to understand here is that you can't add a rep every session or every week. Hypertrophy is a slow process and progress doesn't happen very quickly, especially on isolations where the jumps are bigger. Like adding 1 rep or 5 pounds is kind of arbitrary because let's say you tried to add 5 pounds but you failed, but you could have gained 4 pounds of strength, but it didn't show. What I'm trying to say is you can still be progressing, it's just these arbitrary increments don't really represent that, at least not in the short term. Also, your strength can fluctuate just like your body weight fluctuates, depending on different factors. Let's say you tried to do an extra rep on your set, but you failed that extra rep. Well, what if you got an extra quarter of a rep or half a rep? That's still progression. You should focus more on like month to month or every 2 weeks in terms of progression instead of workout to workout or week to week. Although beginners can add weight or reps fairly quickly, maybe every session or every week, because they are building muscle faster and also learning the technique of each exercise. Now, if you do try to add a rep or 5 pounds every session, then what you could be doing is just compensating your technique and making small adjustments so that you can get that weight or reps. And when people are saying that you have to add a rep or 5 pounds every session and you're not going to progress unless you do it and you just have to do it, that can create some progressive overload anxiety where you're thinking like, oh, I have to add a rep. And then because of that, your technique starts breaking down to get that extra rep. And this can lead to progressive cheating instead of progressive overload because each session, you're just optimizing your leverages further, trying to add more reps when you're not actually building more muscle and progressing that way. You know, maybe on the bench press, you're arching your back a bit more than last time so you can get an extra rep. Now, if you do actually use the same technique and rep speed and everything each session, then you'll notice that you can't really add a rep or 5 pounds every single session, and that's okay. You're still stimulating muscle growth, and if you're going to failure, then you'll be failing at the same reps or weight as last time, but maybe you got an extra half a rep or a quarter of a rep. Like I mentioned before, you're still progressing, it's just that the progression is too small to see it being represented in the increments of 1 rep or 5 pounds. Now, for example, on a deadlift where you could be using a lot of weight, then 5 pounds might not be a lot, so you're probably able to add that very quickly. But on something like a lateral raise, obviously 5 pounds is a larger percentage that you're increasing the weight. So it's going to take a longer time to actually increase the weight and see the progression. And if you're trying to build muscle, then you shouldn't really be chasing the strength, even though that does correlate to muscle growth. But theoretically, if you could build muscle without gaining any strength at all, then the strength numbers wouldn't matter, it would just be the muscle size. I prefer training to failure most of the time because it's kind of a foolproof way to progressively overload, because you're sort of executing on any progression that you made through muscle growth. But if you're training at 2 RIR...
Good 2 here. Wow, you got 20.
What the fuck? If I'm known for anything on the internet,
Dude, you're known for going to failure, man.
I'm known for quitting early.
and you're doing like 10 reps, then if you gained a bit of strength, then it's hard to really know, because if you could go to add a rep, but then you'd be decreasing your RIR, and so it just makes it more confusing. And also, if you're training with RIR, then you have to think about adding the rep, but like, what if you can't add that rep? And then if you're getting stronger, then like eventually you're gonna have to add the rep, but you don't really know when, so it just makes it more complicated. Also, don't progress with RIR, like starting at like 3 and then going to 2 and then 1 and then training failure. I would say just keep that fairly standard and just focus on the double progression. Same with frequency, you shouldn't really be messing with that too much for like progression. The key takeaway from this is that instead of thinking, oh, I have to get one more rep than last time, what you really should be thinking is just using the best technique and not really worry about if you do actually get that extra rep, but just getting somewhere in the range of where you got last time. It's more about actually stimulating the muscle growth in that session than worrying about if you progressed. Now, of course, if you're not seeing any progression after like a month or longer, then yeah, you have to adjust your training. But chances are you just have a little bit too high of expectations of how fast you can actually add the weight or reps. By the way, if you're a beginner or a relatively new lifter, then you can get one-on-one coaching with me, link in the description. Yeah, that's it for the video. See ya.